Dr. Vincent Maphai has traversed the world of academia, the public sector, and the private sector, and he's done so for more than 44 years, and he shared his life journey with me. Having had an unusual and distinguished career in academia, public and private sectors, our guest this evening, through his service on various commissions as well as the boards of BHP Billiton, South African Breweries, the Presidential Review of the SABC, has amassed a wealth of knowledge along his path. Joining us this evening to discuss his career, the role in the public service, and his views on the evolving South African narrative is Dr. Vincent Maphai. Dr. Vinny, pleasure to have you with us, sir.
Thanks very much, Tim.
Much appreciated. And, I've interacted with you so many times in the past, and along the way, I did not imagine that the time will come when I'm talking to you as a retiree. So even now, instead of giving you the privilege of enjoying your retirement, I feel like asking you questions that have got to do with current day South Africa. So, can I give you a pass on that for now?
Well, I'm in your hands, and remember, you can't retire from being a South African.
Exactly. So, because you are an elder now, you enjoy that. No one can hold it against you. Even if it's wrong or misguided, you can say what you want to say. Tell me, what's your take generally of what you see in South Africa? And take a sweep of all this, right? From, let's say, 1990, 94, the change when it happened, and up to now. So give me the benefit of your sense of South Africa over 22 years of democracy.
Tim, let me start this way, just with a general principle I've always followed, that when you assess where we are in the country, there are two ways you can do it. One is to look at our aspirations, where we wish we had been, where we would like to be. If you take that route, you'll be pretty discouraged. But the other way of looking at it is to say we have just emerged 20 years ago from the brink of a civil war. We could have wiped out each other and we didn't. And if you look at it that way, you say serious mistakes have been made, but the bottom line, you and I are still around to debate the future of the country. So I'm very optimistic about where we are going. I don't like at all what I'm seeing now. And I'm taking a position that as South Africans, the first virtue we need to cultivate is the virtue of humility. Whether we like it or not, in the space of democratization, we are still toddlers. We are learning. We have never ran any country. Mistakes have been made. Even greater mistakes are going to be made. But I am confident that as a country, we have resources to pull everything together to get out of it and move forward.
But what you don't like what you're seeing now? What is it that you don't like?
Well, first of all, is the political crisis. You see, the ANC, it's like China and the United States. When things go wrong with them, they affect everybody. I never thought in my lifetime, I would see the ANC so disorganized, so directionless, and really unable to lift itself out of the morass in which it finds itself. It is almost as if the organization has lost a sense of shame and basically just going on rudderlessly. That's what discourages me.
Okay, because it's one of those things that you could not predict, expect, and on the history of the organization, I suppose that it survived so many different eras, different challenges, and remained intact, and this is what it's going through.
This is what it is going through, and I'm sure it will survive it. But you caught it very well. This is an organization that is over 110 years old or so, pretty much an old organization. And I never thought it could reach a point within 20 years where it looks like a paper castle. And this is what it looks like today.
Well, and we could go on. I want to talk about you. Your life story is also varied and has got some interesting things around it. I mean, in the academia, you did very well and obtained master's degrees, studied overseas, and even a doctorate along the way, and went to teach, not only in South Africa, but teach all over the world. And then in the private sector, again, went to the top, served on boards and so on. And in the public sector, again. So it's so many, they seem like separate things, but I doubt that they are that separate. They are integrated to you. They work well together. Just tell me about your life journey in that context.
Well, let's start with the very opening remarks you made about my life in education. It is very interesting. When I grew up at Ridgeville, Bayfit, and so on, every parent would tell you the only thing that's going to get you out of the rut is education. There was no BEE, there were no social grants. You could not rely on government. I always say you never asked what has government done for me. You were always worried about what government was about to do to you.
Exactly.
So a sense of self-reliance, a self-empowerment is what we really got through here. And my parents, poor as they were, insisted we got education. At the end of matric, I was the first of the siblings to go through high school, and the money for university was nowhere. My job from then was to start working, help my father and mother to bring up the remaining siblings, all 6 of them. That's when I registered with UNISA. Worked part-time, not part-time, full-time. And my recollection, it's my first salary on 2nd February, end of February 1970, was 58 Rand a month. But that 58 Rand was used to cover the entire family of 7.
And pay for your study costs.
And pay for the study costs and so on. And my railway ticket was 2 Rand.
And then from the 58 rands per month, so you got a scholarship to Netherlands?
Yes, to Belgium. I got a scholarship.
Belgium, that is, yeah.
Where after a junior degree, I went there to study philosophy. And then I came back with a master's in philosophy and started teaching. My first appointment was at University of Transkei. Then I came to Wits. And from Wits, I went to Western Cape. From Western Cape, I went to the HSRC. And after that 20 years in academia, I went to the private sector.
Yeah, and actually I recall very well those days, particularly a stint at the HSRC, when we used to trouble you for your commentary on a whole number of things. But how were you drawn into the private sector then?
Tim, let me put it this way. My life has always... I've never directed my life. I've seen opportunities in it and grabbed it. I have 3 sons and a daughter. And my daughter was born with a physical and mental disability of a cerebral palsy. And I took a decision that time that South Africa is not the first world. I have an obligation to her. I need to earn enough money to build a trust that would look comfortably after her for as long as she lived. I've achieved that objective. If God calls me today, the girl will be in safe hands with the brothers and financially. So that's where I made money. And after I left for 15 years. I was 15 years in the private sector. I've retired, and believe you and me, I'm going back as a professor now. To my first love.
And we'll talk about that in a moment. You retired and then you're going overseas for that matter. Is it got to do with your concern about the current situation, or it's got nothing to do with that? It's just an opportunity that
No, it has nothing to do with it. My whole life was lived under apartheid. And however things are discouraging in South Africa today, we are nowhere near the 70s, 80s, when we were really at the height of the ruthlessness of apartheid. So I would never leave the country because of political dissatisfaction. I should have done that long time ago. What I do need now is a bit of space to breathe, to think, to reflect. And somebody warned me when I retired that South Africa never allows anybody to retire. You are going to be dragged into this and that. And I was offered this position. I was recruited into it. And frankly, it gives me time to look at the country from outside, and a year is very little. I'll be writing, and I really love writing. And I'm looking at South Africa. I've been collecting information in the past 20 years, and there's a lot I'm able to write about, but I just need space and quiet now.
Now, the time that you may have spent with the political system, what is your reflection on it? When you were there closer to the public sector as it was undergoing change itself, including the review of the SABCs and so forth?
Well, I worked very closely with Madiba and also with Mbeki, and I haven't been involved at all with President Zuma. I knew him very well as deputy. We worked very closely on other things. I think the first thing that strikes me about the early 90s was just the excitement of being one of the architects of the new society, working round the clock, excited, inspired. Madiba was a very, very special person. He just had the ability to make you love the country, to have faith in him, and to know that everything will come right. He appointed me chair the Presidential Review Commission, which actually assessed the performance of his government. And my worst nightmare was when we had to come and give him the report. You know, it was a positive report, but also critical in certain respects. And I remember going to the Union building, sitting with him, briefing him about it. And I never forget that. Immediately after that, he called his legal advisor and said, it's fine, you can now release the report immediately on the wire. He thanked me for it. I mean, me, the commission that did the work. The man was so large that criticism for him was an opportunity to do things better. And Mbeki, we worked very, very closely. You know, we had informal meetings with him. We would give him informal feedback. And what was striking about those of us who were working around him is that many of us were not ANC members, and we were not being paid. But Mbeki is a great listener. Sometimes you think he's half asleep. And he will summarize in a few minutes what you waffled about in several hours. The man was just incredible. But I've had the privilege of working under both of them. And if you were to ask me what would I credit them with, Madiba's greatest achievement is that you and I are still alive. We forget that we are on the brink of civil war. And I think Mbeki, for me, achieved three major things. First, he got the economy, which was in serious crisis. He rebuilt it from scratch, really, quite strongly. Number two, he put Africa on the map, no doubt about it. And three, internationally, South Africa was very highly respected under his political leadership. Yeah.
Well, let's conclude, Dr. Maphai, because many young South Africans would like to reap some benefit from you besides the work that you've done, your own personal philosophy. You studied philosophy, so it's an appropriate word to use. Your own philosophy of life that has sustained you up to now, even allowing you to come out of retirement and still go and teach. What is it that would say the essence that young South Africans can learn from you?
I guess there are many things, but the first thing I want to say is that happiness is your responsibility. Nobody, not even your wife, your husband, boyfriend, or girlfriend, can make you happy. You create your own happiness. And number two, government and everybody else helping you can only do so much. At the end of the day, you have to get into the driver's seat, go through some crashes, and turn every failure into an opportunity to grow. Or if I may say, don't ever even use the word failure. Just see it as a setback, but take charge of your responsibility. And if you are still able to, there's no end to learning. At the end of the day, education is the cornerstone of every society.
Dr. Vincent Maphai,
thanks.
Enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks very much.
And of course, I've been privileged myself to have so many conversations with you in the past.
Thanks very much.
And I appreciated your time.
Thank you.
Everything
Thank
of
you.
the best to you.
Thank you very much.
And of course, I'm going to have that drink and dinner with you soon before you leave.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Vincent Maphai, one of the large personalities that we have in South Africa, unassuming, very modest and humble, but then privileged for some of us to be able to celebrate his life with him here on Tonight with Tim Modise.